Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The course is Project Governance, Leadership and Communication. Dear student, unfortunately we couldn't have a class as usual due to coronavirus, and we forced to prepare this, what we call it. Is it online or distance or I don't know, video teaching. And in this video, I'm going to record the first two chapters. As you remember, chapter 1 we done already. We discussed a lot of issues related with project governance, leadership, and the communication. But today, I'm going to deal with the two chapters of which continues from chapter 1, chapter 2, and chapter 3. As of chapter 4, which is communication, I will recommend you to read it, and we will take it as a reading assignment. But I need a summary of it. And within the next week, at least within 2 weeks, in addition to your normal assignment which you have in your course outline, you will send me a summary of chapter 4. Chapter 4 you will summarize, particularly focus on leadership skills in communication. To communicate what expected from a leader. You have to read those slides, and as you have the slide on your hand and also attach it with this video, you have to prepare a summary and then send me within the next 2 weeks, and I will take it as an assignment, particularly as an attendance, because I cannot manage your attendance since we are now coming face to face. And I will take that as an attendance. It will have 10 marks. 10 marks. I will say it again, 10 marks. You have to send me by next week. As of chapter 2 deals with project governance. And now the first thing in project governance is that of understanding governance. What does it mean? There is no clear definition for a governance, but you can from the beginning differentiate a governance from government. Government is a kind of institution which deals with a governing activity, and that means governance is a function, a system or a process which has to be done by an institution called government. The word governance comes from a Greek word which they used to say kabarnan, which means to steer. Literally, that means it is to lead or to command or to direct or to follow up. When we see the dictionary meaning of the word governance, as you can see on Oxford English Dictionary, it simply means action or manner of governing or a process of governing. Governing is controlling, leading, directing, and guiding. To govern, when we see in a political term or in a political way, to govern means is to rule. To rule, you need some authority, and that means that authority has to either come from your power, or that authority may have to be assigned to you with someone who has a right to assign that authority. The authority mostly comes from either sovereignty you have, or it may be direct, or and sometimes we say to govern is to direct and control. First I said to govern means is to rule. Second I said it is to direct and control, and also to regulate and to command. And this together needs some underlying source of it. There must be something which gives you a power to rule, to regulate, to command, and to control. Now from this, what we see is two things must be clear for you from here. From this definition, two things is very clear. What are they? The first thing is this: in a governance, there is a direction giving. And when you direct, you have to control on that direction. A behavior has to be controlled on that direction. And so how this profession developed, how this activity first emerged. Earlier, the issue of governance originated from the failure of the sovereign authorities functioning, or state's failure. As you know, state now failing in a different area. For instance, See the coronavirus, what it is doing. The state is failing. They could not provide necessary protection, and they could not fight as they expected because they are a protector. And the government emerged in that case because the monolithic capacity of the state failed, and then we need someone else, what we call a private actor, someone who act but not a government. Actually, in actual sense, in a political sense, but that person is not a government. It is not a state or public representative. So we need someone from outside, which we call a private entity, which can fulfill the mandate they fail to provide. And when the state fails, and the state authority also understand the limitation and the failure of providing service that needed from them, and also a globalized world coming, and also which make the literally the state function depleted, then there must be some kind of a process of outsourcing a function of a government, the mandate that actually expected from government, and this has to be contracted to private entity. Now look, the function which expected from public entity, which we call a state, and the state failing to provide that function, and then there a need developed, a need created. What kind of need created? For someone who can substitute them and provide that service. And then the outsourcing developed. With this development, a kind of controlling mechanism must be there. Controlling mechanism of what? The entity which needed to provide the function in a public area, but which failed, and then outsourced it is part of mandate to a private entity, which is not actually a public entity, which has to provide a function instead or on behalf of them. Then there must be some controlling mechanism, steering mechanism, then developed the concept of government or governance. And in a governance, we have a mutual dependency between the actors. See, a public entity which represents a public interest, and their failure to provide those functions, and the outsourced or entity to which those functions outsourced, which we call a private entity. All of them depend on each other. They have to work together. And then in that, a government or a governance is a system of guiding, regulating, and influencing of whom? Both those representative of people or public entity and the private entity. So governance, it is an arrangement which created as hybrid of a practice, public and the private entity practice. So three things must be clear here. First, governance arrangement become a multifaceted and hybrid practice which combines administrative, public administrative, and as well as a non-profit kind of organizational running. And we have also a multi-jurisdictional kind of thing. In a sense, see now today, in a coronavirus case, a public entity failing to provide those protection needed from them, because this thing is global and it goes beyond their capacity. For instance, in Africa, entry of this coronavirus is not through a public entity. It mostly comes from private entity, particularly those airplane operators. In Ethiopia, it comes from that Ethiopian flight brought us a lot. In Somaliland too, in another country too. Now, this kind of public-private mix of things there. And second, we have a kind of multi-jurisdictional and transnational activity there in any governance situation. And governance is, lastly, increasing the range and the plurality of stakeholders, a private-public partnership and a private-public entity. This thing is true for all. In any aspect, in a private entity's governance, we got the same situation. For instance, in a project, we have a government control on what activity we can do. That is a public governance. And at the same time, organizational structure is there, which creates policy, strategy, and rules and regulation. That is a governance. It is a steering. And we have a contractor, individual worker, and a private person who participate as a beneficiaries and as a stakeholders. Now you see a mix, even in a single project life. So how we have to explain? What kind of explanation we can have? And there are a lot of theories developed for that. What kind of situation has to be there in a governance? A lot of theory there. I don't know how to say that in Somali. Governance is oh no, not like that. But I don't know in Somali. Governance in Somali. What does it mean? Governance. I don't know. Anyhow, but let me explain through theories. How this kind of relationship has to be managed. What should be there in a governance situation? We got a lot of theories which explain this. And the first theory is that agency theory. In agency theory, the explanation is this. They say, mostly this agency theory developed from the existence of agency situation in any part of work, in a private and a public. And a government the governance in a public area happens through individuals, humankind or natural person, while the public at large is artificial. As you know, state is an artificial. The state cannot act by itself. Mashak inkar to dawlad. Dawlad wa dawlad sidi garan, it is an abstract. And someone has to represent here, or which we call it. That means a state. And those executives, legislative and the judiciary, they take an authority from people and they work on behalf of them. And in this case, agency theory developed to explain the relationship between the governed, governing, and the governor. Was three people. People who govern, and the process of governing, and people who actually do the function. And in this sense, this agency theory explains this way. It says a principal delegates a work to agent. Principal means a person who first had the authority, a person with right and the power. Authority, what does it mean? Authority is two things, right plus power. When you have a power, you may not able to use that power, because if you don't have a right, you cannot do it. For instance, Somaliland Constitution, Article 1, دستور كسوماليلاند قدب كواد وحير شعب كسوماليلاند أود إيو أو حقوق ده هيستا. If I say it correctly, I don't know. It says Somaliland people got the right given in the sovereignty allocated to them by God. Allah gave them. And that authority delegated, given to whom? To the government of Somaliland, which they created in 1991. Since on, what Garanesa. And the Dastur Somaliland, which created 2001, indicates that. And that means, in this theory, we have to see the relationship between someone who governs and the function or issue to be governed and the people to be governed. What they say, they try to solve a relationship problem between a principal and agent. In our case, between public and the governing organ or body or dawlat. In this case, what they say, principal and the agent got the different interests. They have different goals. The goal of governing, the goal of agent and the goal of principal is not the same. Let us take a private entity. For instance, we are in Abarsotech University. Abarsotech is an artificial. It is not natural. Abarsotech cannot do things by itself, and they need someone who acts on their behalf. That is humankind, agent. And the interest of the Abarsotech is offering an education. But the people who work there, they have another interest. That is a profit making. And their interest is different. Their interest is two different things. And this difference, they creates a difference in a preference, risk preference. And so what will happen is this. In this theory, it says the focus has to be on reducing the agent or managerial opportunism. Look what it says. Always managers and agent, those who controls the administration, most of the time they try to take an advantage. They are opportunistic. And because it is such problem, it originates from the separation of ownership and the control. And you see this clearly from an organization which managed by the owner. Most of the time, conflict of interest you see. He mixed two things. What thing? The organizational interest and the ownership interest, they are conflicting. The other one is providing a service and the other one is getting a profit. And these two things is not able to go together. In between it, you will affect the public. And so agency theory assumes that there is subordinate always as individualistic, opportunistic, and self-serving. And they see then governance must be there. Agent Marco Oroneno, you have to understand, agent is a manager, someone who manages on behalf of the other. In that case, they are individualistic. They try to serve their interest, and they want to take an opportunity. In this case, governance, the CEO level administration, they have to focus on controlling the greediness of those agents and the selfishness of those agents and controlling, and they have to survey and create a conformance to the rules of the organization. That means mix of three things must be there. Public interest, organizational interest, and selfish individual interest has to be compromised and has to be balanced. But anyhow, this agency has, this explanation has some fluidity, it has some kind of critics, and see your slide. And the second theory is stewardship theory. And this theory tried to solve the problem of the first theory. How? The first one says agent got some kind of problem. But this one says no, they don't have a problem. Even sometimes the leaders in our organization are pro-organizational, and they are trustworthy, and they serve a collective interest. And since they have this kind of organizational citizenship characteristics, since they take a responsibility, a governance has to work in the best interest of the organization. That is the sense of the sense of the theory. And they say, with respect to governance, stewardship theory explains, and they suggest top manager act in the best of the interest of the organization. Then, even sometimes when there is no incentive for them, and for that reason, a role of governance has to be simply creating a strategy, not controlling, not reducing the greediness. Instead, it has to be creating a kind of a direction for performance functioning, and creating a kind of guideline for management to work in a cooperation in order to achieve the mission and objective. Still, this theory has a problem. And another theory developed called rational choice theory. In this theory, all of them, they got a choice. Willingly, they compromise some part of it, and they work for the goodness of collective interest. And please read this theory carefully. So you see now how things explain in a governance, which we are going to ask certain question in project governance. The issue is controlling individual interest and the collective interest and the public interest. And then let us see the detail of governance. In an organization, we have two governance: corporate governance and strategic governance. And sometimes we call operational. The other one is operational governance. Corporate governance clearly means establishment of a system. Listen carefully. Establishment of a system by which companies are strategically directed. You know, direction means showing the way. And it is a system in which organization is strategically integrated within a system. And it is through which we integratively and holistically control the organization. Listen, integratively. What does that mean? by integrating entire structure and the people and the institution, objective, goals, and everything in order to create what? A consistent system. And it is by which we holistically control, not separately, but in a kind of holistic, what Gran is the holistic marko. And it is a kind of a system by which we administer the organization in an ethical way, which reflects the context in which we work. And now for non-profit governance also you can say the same explanation. And based on this explanation, there is a gap. We said it is holistically, integratively managing, directing, controlling the organization. When we say in a general sense, not in a detailed sense. But in organizational management, we have 3 levels of management. We have corporate level management, strategic level management, and operational level management. A strategic level management and operational level management is an area in which mostly a project set in order to implement a policy program and things created by corporate level management. So to make it holistic, we find a separation or a kind of management link between corporate level, strategy level, and operational level. What will happen? Operationally, we focus on things we do day to day, technical issues and operational matters. Strategic area, they focus on setting a means, setting a program, setting what we call how to achieve something. And they don't focus on setting the rules and the regulation and the policies. That is a CEO's activity. Then the question is this: how we strategically, holistically, integratively manage the project. Because project manager is not a CEO in an organization. Project manager is an operational level manager. Then how we can mix it, how we can make it holistic is a big question. So far no one answered it. Then scholars developed a clear, simple response to that. That is a project governance, which tried to link at strategy level, which tried to bring the operational the operational level management and corporate level management to have what we call a connection, a bond at the strategy level, which try to create, though it is process oriented, but got a system by which a project is strategically directed, integratively managed, and holistically controlled. Where? In the organization. And so now, how we can theorize? Okay, if it is that, how we can theorize? 3-level administration we have seen: technical level, strategic level, and the corporate level or institutional level, mixing them. Then this will take us to 3 explanation, school of thought. In a project, we have 3 school of thought: a single school of thought, multi-frame school of thought, and large capital school of thought. Then how things happen. In a single firm which operates a project in inside, the project management has to be at a corporate level. Why? Because that is the only way we can holistically integrate it into the organization. And in a multi-firm operation, we have a multi-firm cooperation. Different organizations cooperate in order to do the project. In that case, the problem is how to control a difference. A difference between whom? Difference in interest between different organizations participating in an organization. Then we have to go beyond that. And we have to work on contract administration between the organization. So project governance has to deal not with firm issue, but with between firm issue. An issue between different organizations participating in a project. You can talk, for instance, a big project done between different countries. Tusalahana Kusiyo, Berbera Port. It happens between different organization coming from Ethiopia, from UAE, and Somaliland. And they got different interests. And they have to work on how to create a protocol and a transparency between them, and creating a mutual interest, and understanding each other in a formal contract. And large capital school of thought is that when we need a multinational, transnational cooperation. MK, in a multi-firm issue, we talk about a firm. Project governance has to worry about what we call how to control the difference between organization. But now, in a large capital project, we have to focus on the issue of how to deal transnational issues, how to focus on and multicultural issues, how to settle a macro external environment problem to reduce its impact on the organization. And I will advise you to go back. Please go back and see your project environment. In a large capital, project governance has to deal with that. And there is an assignment in your handout. You have to see that page and work by yourself. Project governance framework. There are some principles by which we manage a project. There are 4. The first one, when you govern a project, you have to make sure it has a single accountability point. You cannot assign a project to a different person, because that will create a conflict of interest. And you have to make sure service delivery ownership and project ownership has to be combined. There is clear explanation in your handout. You can see that. You have to ensure separation of stakeholder management and the project decision making. Stakeholder management is another issue. And you have to make sure separation of project governance and organizational governance structure. Because I said, we have to create a holistic management in which what we call is this, unity and diversity must be respected. And having said this, there are some element of good project governance. There are around 12. See your handout. Good. If you got any question, my phone is open always. My email is open always. Write me, call me. And that is the end of your chapter 2. And I'm so sorry I could not be there with you to tell you. And sometimes what Garan is, you are a little bit new student. We did not have much time together. But as I'm known in a class, I used to speak in Somali, but today I make things English. I hope you understand.